You know, our bodies are this incredible network of biological wiring, so complex it's almost hard to wrap your head around. Every single second, millions of signals are zipping up and down our spinal cord. So today, we're going to untangle some of that wiring to solve a really fascinating medical mystery, one that kind of turns everything you think you know about injuries completely on its head. So, here it is, the big question. At first glance, this just doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, the injury's on the left, so shouldn't all the problems be on the left? Well, not exactly. But this isn't a mistake, you see. It's actually a massive clue that tells us exactly how our bodies are put together. Yeah, that contradiction? It's not a bug, it's a feature. For a neurologist, it's like a map that lets them pinpoint the exact location of an injury with incredible accuracy. To solve it, we just need to understand the pieces of the puzzle, the nerve pathways themselves. So that's the heart of it, right? Same side motor loss, but opposite side sensory loss. It sounds impossible, but by the time we're done here, you'll see exactly how and why this happens. Let's dive in. Okay, to get our heads around this, let's start with a simple analogy. Think of your spinal cord like a massive, multi-lane superhighway. It's the absolute critical information link between your brain and, well, the rest of your body. Right, and just like any highway, the traffic flows in two directions. You've got signals coming down from the brain, we call those descending or motor pathways, telling your body to do things, and then you have signals going up to the brain, the ascending or sensory pathways, telling it what's happening out in the world. All right, let's meet our first key player on this highway, the descending motor pathway. Just think of this as the go signal. When your brain decides, hey, let's move that leg, this is the highway that carries that command all the way down to the muscle. Okay, next up we've got an ascending pathway, and this one's for pain and temperature. This is your ouch signal, or your whoa, that's hot signal. It's a really critical warning system that shoots up to your brain to let you know about potential danger. And finally, our third key player is the pathway for proprioception. Now this one is really cool. This is your where am I signal. It's how you can do things like touch your nose with your eyes closed. It gives your brain this constant, real-time map of where all your body parts are. Okay, now we are getting to the absolute heart of the mystery. See, these highways don't just run in straight lines. At some point, they cross from one side of the body to the other. And where they cross, well, that changes everything. So this crossover point has a fancy technical name, decussation. It's the whole reason the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, and vice versa. But here's the kicker, and this is the crucial part. Not all of these pathways cross over in the same place. And this is it. This is the whole ballgame. We basically have two types of travelers on our highway. The pain and temperature pathway, it's an early crosser. The second it gets into the spinal cord, bam, it crosses right over to the other side. But the motor and proprioception pathways, they're late crossers. They travel way up on the same side and only cross over much, much higher up in the brainstem. This diagram just lays it all out perfectly. Look at that pain signal on the left. It enters and immediately zips across to the opposite side to travel up to the brain. But check out the proprioception signal on the right. It travels all the way up the same side, just waiting until it gets to the brainstem to finally make its cross. Yeah, I love this analogy. The pain pathway really is like a non-stop flight. The signal gets on, immediately switches tracks to the other side, and then it's a straight shot, an uninterrupted journey all the way up the cord. This immediate crossover is the secret key to solving our entire puzzle. Okay, we have all our pieces on the board. We know about our three different highways, and most importantly, we know who the early crosser is and who the late crossers are. It is time to go back to our clinical mystery and solve this thing. All right, let's put on our detective hats. We know the rules of the road now. So let's imagine there's a lesion, a roadblock basically, on the left side of the spinal cord. And let's trace what happens to each one of our signals. Okay, first up, let's trace those late crossers, our motor and proprioception pathways. Now remember, at this level of the spine, these signals haven't crossed yet. They're still traveling on the same side. So imagine that go signal from the brain. It's heading down to the left leg, so it's traveling on the left side of the spinal cord. And what happens? It runs smack into our roadblock before it ever gets a chance to cross. The signal is blocked. The result? Paralysis on the left side, the very same side as the injury. And you guessed it, it's the exact same story for proprioception. That where am I signal from the left leg travels up the left side of the cord. It also hits that same lesion and gets blocked. The result? You lose that sense of position on your left side. Again, same side as the injury. So far, so good? This all makes perfect sense.
Okay, but now comes the twist. Let's trace our early crosser, that pain pathway. You have to remember its special rule. It crosses immediately. What does that mean for our scenario? It means the pain signal coming from the right leg is actually traveling up the left side of the spinal cord.
And boom, there it is. The ouch signal from the right leg comes in, immediately crosses over to the left side to start its journey to the brain. And bam, it hits the very same roadblock on the left. The signal is blocked. And what's the result? You lose pain and temperature sensation from your right leg, the opposite side of the injury. And just like that, the mystery is solved.
Okay, I know that can feel like a lot to juggle in your head, but don't worry, there's a fantastic little trick, a mnemonic, to keep all of this straight.
It's super simple. Just remember this: 2 up, 1 down. 2 of our pathways, the late crossers, motor and proprioception, they cross up high in the brainstem. And 1 pathway, our early crosser, pain and temperature, crosses down low in the spinal cord itself. It's a simple little rule that perfectly explains this really complex puzzle. So this very specific kind of weird pattern of symptoms, it actually has a name: Brown-Séquard syndrome. And it's the classic clinical sign for exactly this type of spinal cord injury. What started out as this really confusing puzzle is now a crystal clear diagnostic map for doctors. So, you see, what started out as a super strange biological quirk is actually an incredibly precise map for doctors. Understanding this wiring isn't just some academic exercise. It's absolutely fundamental to medicine. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secrets are just waiting to be discovered, hidden in the complex layout of our nervous system?
You know, when you think about it, your spinal cord is kind of like a super highway. It's this incredibly complex, high-speed network just buzzing with a constant flood of information between your brain and your body. So let's dive in and see exactly how all of this amazing biological traffic is managed. I mean, really think about that. It sounds so simple, right? You think, I'm going to kick that ball, and a split second later, your foot moves. But how? How does that signal actually make the incredible journey from your brain all the way down to your foot? And how does the feeling of a hot stove travel up from your hand to your brain to register as ouch? That's the amazing puzzle we're going to unpack today. So we're going to focus on 3 main players, 3 of these information highways. First, you've got the one going down, the motor pathway. That's your brain telling your body what to do. Then you have 2 major ones coming up. These are sensory pathways. One is for pain and temperature, and the other is for things like fine touch, vibration, and just knowing where your arms and legs are in space. That's a cool thing called proprioception. And here's our game plan. We'll start at the central hub of this whole system, a place called the medulla. Then we're going to follow the express route for pain signals and see how it's totally different from the other pathways that have a mandatory layover. We'll wrap it all up with a really simple rule to remember everything. And finally, we'll see why all this anatomical detail is so unbelievably critical in the real world of medicine. All right, so our journey begins down in the brainstem, at a structure that is basically Grand Central Station for all of this neural traffic. Say hello to the medulla. The best way to think about it is like a massive international airport. Every single signal, every flight of information has to pass through this area on its way to or from the brain. It's the control tower. And that brings us to the most important question of the day. Does every signal follow the same route? Does every bit of information have to stop at this airport hub for a connection? Or do some of them get a non-stop ticket straight through? The answer to that is the key to understanding this entire system. So let's start with the VIP traveler, the signal that gets the express route. And that's the pathway that carries pain and temperature. This pathway has a name. It's called the spinothalamic tract. Now, when you touch something that's way too hot, this is the system that springs into action. Its entire travel plan is built for one thing: speed, which is exactly why we're calling it the non-stop flight. Now pay close attention to where this journey starts. A pain signal comes in from, let's say, your right hand. But here's the twist. It doesn't travel up the right side of your spinal cord. No, it crosses over to the left side almost instantly. We're talking way down low, right where it entered. And here's the non-stop part, the whole reason for the analogy. As that signal shoots up the cord and reaches our airport hub, the medulla, it doesn't stop. There's no layover, no changing planes. It just zips right on through on its way to the brain. It's a direct route, one immediate crossover, and then it's a straight shot, floor it to the top. Okay, so what about our other signals? Their travel plans are completely different. Instead of a nonstop flight, they have a scheduled layover, and it's a really important one. So here, we've got motor signals heading down from the brain, and those proprioception signals for fine touch and body position heading up. And unlike that pain express, their routes are much more deliberate, and they kind of travel together, following the same set of rules. So here's the first huge difference: their initial journey. A motor command for your left leg travels down the left side of your spinal cord. A touch signal from your left leg travels up the left side. See? There is no immediate crossover way down low. They stick to their own lane. And this is where their layover happens. Way up in the brainstem, they finally reach the medulla. And it's right here at this central hub that they stop, they connect with a brand new neuron, and then they finally cross over to the opposite side to continue their journey. This is a fundamental difference in their travel plans. So we've got these two totally different strategies going on. One pathway crosses low and fast, and two others take their time and cross way up high after a layover. How in the world are we supposed to remember all this? Well, luckily, there's a brilliantly simple rule that makes it all click. And this slide basically reveals the secret pattern. Just look at the two pathways on the ends, motor and proprioception. See that? They both cross high, up in the medulla. But that one right in the middle, pain and temperature, it crosses way down low in the spinal cord. So here it is. This is the rule. Two of the pathways, motor and proprioception, cross up high in the medulla. One of them, pain and temperature, crosses down low in the spinal cord. Just remember, two up high, one down low. It's really that simple. And this table right here, this is your ultimate cheat sheet. You've got the spinal thalamic for pain crossing immediately in the spinal cord. That's our one down low. Then you have the dorsal column for touch and the corticospinal for motor commands, and they both cross late, up in the medulla, are two up high. This is literally the architectural blueprint of our spinal highway system. Okay, this is all fascinating anatomy, but what's the real-world application? Why is knowing where these different highways cross so incredibly important? Well, it's because of this simple but unbelievably powerful equation. If you understand the anatomy, if you know the wiring diagram, you can look at a patient's symptoms and work backward to figure out exactly where the damage, or what doctors call a lesion, is located in their nervous system. Let's use a classic clinical example to really prove this point. It's called Brown-Sequard syndrome. This is what happens when, tragically, an injury damages exactly one half, say the left or the right side, of the spinal cord, but leaves the other side intact. So just imagine an injury on the left side of the spinal cord. Let's think this through. What happens? Well, motor commands and proprioception signals travel on the same side, right? So they get blocked by the injury. The patient loses motor control and proprioception on the left side. But wait, pain signals from the right side of the body crossed over low and were traveling up that now damaged left side. So the patient loses pain and temperature sensation on the right side. You end up with this very specific, very strange crossed pattern of symptoms. And that is the power of knowing the blueprint. That unique crossed pattern of symptoms is like a giant flashing arrow that allows a doctor to pinpoint the exact location of the injury, turning a really confusing puzzle into a precise diagnosis. That's why this matters. You know, the 2 high 1 low rule isn't just a cool fact. It reveals this elegant logic that's built right into our own wiring. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other hidden rules and incredible systems are firing away in our nervous system right now, making everything from our heartbeat to our very thoughts possible?
Hello and welcome. Today we are diving into one of the most incredible structures in your entire body, the spinal cord. It's the critical communication link between your brain and, well, literally everything else. So, how does this vital connection actually work? I mean, think about it. You feel the texture of the ground, your brain processes it, and you decide to take a step, all in a fraction of a second. That's not magic, you know? It's your nervous system at its absolute best, a seamless, lightning-fast conversation happening inside you every single moment. Really, the best way to picture the spinal cord is as a biological superhighway. You've got traffic flowing in 2 directions. Commands from the brain are speeding down one way, telling your body what to do. At the same time, all the sensations from the world around you are traveling up to the brain. Now, to really understand how this highway is so efficient, we can't just look at the whole thing at once. We need to zoom way in, on one of the crucial intersections, a kind of sorting station along the route.
And here it is. This is a cross-section of the spinal cord. Now, I know it might look a little complex at first, but this design is just beautifully efficient. It's the key to organizing all that nerve traffic, and we're going to focus on the most important part, the dedicated entry and exit points for all that information.
And that brings us to the most important rule of this entire system. To prevent total chaos, to make sure signals don't crash into each other, information can only travel in one direction on any given path. It is strictly one-way traffic. Okay, so to get this one-way system, we just need a quick orientation. Dorsal means the backside. An easy way to remember that is to think of a dolphin's dorsal fin, which is on its back. Ventral, then, is the front side. So basically, the spinal cord has a dedicated back door and a front door. So here's the rule. All sensory information, everything you feel, like touch, pain, temperature, it all enters the spinal cord through that back door. This entry point is called the dorsal root. Think of it as the exclusive on-ramp for sensations on our superhighway.
And here's that rule in action. Let's say you step on something sharp, right? That pain signal from your leg travels up a nerve, and it enters the spinal cord only through that dorsal root, the designated backdoor entrance. No exceptions.
Now, the scientific term for these incoming sensory signals is afferent. And here's a super easy way to remember it. Afferent signals arrive at the spinal cord. A is for arrive. Simple as that. Okay, let's flip to the other side of the equation. If all the sensory information is coming in the back, then all the outgoing action commands, the signals telling your muscles to actually move, they have to exit through the front door. This is the ventral root. This is our highway's off-ramp. So a command from your brain to, say, kick a soccer ball, it travels all the way down the spinal cord, and then it exits through the correct ventral root to tell that specific leg muscle exactly what to do. It's a direct line from your thought to the action itself. And yep, you guessed it, there's a term for these outgoing motor signals too. It's efferent. And just like before, we have a simple trick. Efferent signals exit the spinal cord. E is for exit. So we've got this simple, really elegant system of organization. And to make it totally unforgettable, there's a fantastic mnemonic. Just remember the name Dave. Dorsal is for afferent signals coming in. Ventral is for efferent signals going out. If you can remember Dave, you have completely mastered the fundamental law of the spinal cord. Let's just put that all side by side for a second. On the back, the dorsal side, you have sensory signals arriving, and on the front, the ventral side, you have motor signals exiting. It's this beautiful fundamental division of labor in your nervous system. So, what happens to these one-way streets once they leave the main sorting station? Well, they merge. Just outside the spinal cord, the dorsal root carrying sensory info and the ventral root carrying motor commands, they join together. And this merger creates what we call a spinal nerve. The best way to think of it is as a single, powerful, two-way data cable. It bundles together all the sensory information coming from a part of your body and all the motor commands going to it. Okay, so this is all really cool anatomy, but why does this detailed wiring diagram even matter? Well, in the real world, it's absolutely critical. For doctors, this principle is everything. Understanding a patient's symptoms allows you to pinpoint the exact location of a problem in their nervous system. For instance, if a patient can't move their leg, but they can still feel it just fine, a doctor can immediately figure out that the problem is probably with the ventral motor off-ramp and not the dorsal sensory on-ramp. This anatomical map is literally the key to getting an accurate diagnosis. But this brings us to one last fascinating puzzle. We've established the Dave rule, right? Sensory in the back, motor out the front. It all seems to happen on the same side. So, how is it possible that an injury on the left side of the spinal cord can sometimes cause symptoms on the right side of the body? We'll unravel that mystery in our next explainer.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a real neurological head scratcher, a puzzle that seems to totally defy logic. But in solving it, we're going to uncover a fundamental secret about how doctors diagnose what's going on deep inside your own nervous system.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with a question that sounds, well, impossible. How can you have one single injury on the left side of your spinal cord and it paralyzes your left leg, but it makes your right leg go numb? It just sounds wrong, doesn't it? But stick with me, because by the end of this, it's going to make perfect sense.
To even begin to crack this case, we've got to understand the map. So let's take a quick tour of the body's internal wiring to see how these signals actually get from point A to point B. So I want you to think of your brain and spinal cord as the ultimate information superhighway. Your brain is mission control, and the spinal cord? That's the main trunk line, this massive bundle of cables carrying messages back and forth all day, every day. Now, this highway is not a one-way street. You've got traffic flowing in two directions. You have ascending pathways, which are carrying all your sensory information, things like touch, pain, temperature, up to the brain. And then you have descending pathways carrying motor commands like, hey, move your leg, down from the brain. And this is where it gets really cool, how signals actually get on and off this highway. Think of it like this. Your sensory info, like when you touch something, it uses an on-ramp at the back of the spinal cord. That's called the dorsal root. Meanwhile, the commands going out to your muscles use an off-ramp at the front, the ventral root. Okay, so we've got our highway and we've got our on and off ramps, but not all traffic takes the same route. Now we need to look at the specific lanes, and this is crucial, the crossings. This is where we're going to find the key to our whole puzzle. Okay, you're going to want to pay close attention here because this right here, this is the key that unlocks the whole mystery. Signals don't always stay on the same side of the body. At some point, they have to cross over. But, and this is the kicker, they don't all cross at the same place. Just remember this simple rule. 2 cross high, 1 crosses low. And this shows you exactly what I'm talking about. Look at the pain signal. It comes into the spinal cord and bam, it immediately switches over to the opposite lane. But the signal for proprioception, which is just your brain's sense of where your leg is without you having to look at it, it stays in its own lane for almost the entire trip up, only crossing way, way up high in the brainstem. So let's just hammer this home. The motor commands telling you to move, they cross high. Your sense of position and fine touch, it also crosses high. But the signals for pain and temperature, they're the odd ones out. They cross way down low, right where they enter the spinal cord. Okay, we've got our map. Time to put on our detective hats. Now that we understand these different routes, we can finally go back to our patient and figure out what in the world is going on. So back to our patient's totally baffling symptoms. Remember, there's a lesion, just an area of damage on the left side of their spinal cord. And it's causing them to lose movement and position sense in their left leg, but pain and temperature sensation in their right leg. Let's trace the signals. First up, the motor command. It's coming down from the brain on the left side, headed for the left leg, but it runs smack into the lesion. The signal is blocked, roadblock. That explains the paralysis on the left side, the same side as the injury. Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about the sense of position coming up from that same left leg? Well, remember, that signal travels up the same side of the spinal cord, so it also hits that exact same roadblock. That explains why they can't tell where their left leg is. Still with me? But here is the moment it all clicks, the aha moment. Let's look at the pain signal coming from the right leg. It enters the spinal cord on the right side, but what does it do right away? It crosses over to the left side to start its journey up to the brain. And in doing so, it travels directly into the path of the lesion. The signal gets blocked, and the patient loses pain sensation from their right leg. Mystery solved. And this whole weird specific pattern of symptoms, it's not just some thought experiment. It actually has a name. It's a real clinical condition called Brown-Sequard syndrome. And once you understand the wiring, this confusing mess of symptoms suddenly makes perfect logical sense. So puzzle solved, right? But you might be thinking, okay, that's a neat trick for one super rare syndrome, but why should I care? Why does this matter? It matters because this exact way of thinking, this anatomical detective work of tracing symptoms back along their known pathways to find a single point of failure, it isn't just a party trick. It's literally the foundation of how neurologists solve puzzles in the brain and spinal cord every single day. And that brings us to the real key takeaway, the single most important idea to hold on to from this entire explainer. When something goes wrong, the body sends out what can feel like completely mixed signals, contradictory, confusing signals. But as we've just seen, those signals are never truly random. By knowing the map, by understanding the body's fundamental wiring, a doctor can translate a bizarre set of symptoms into a precise location and a clear diagnosis. It's a powerful reminder that even in the most complex machine we know, everything is connected.
Have you ever looked at a complex wiring diagram and just felt
Lost? Well, the human spinal cord is one of the most incredible, most intricate wiring systems in existence. But figuring it out isn't just some abstract neuroscience exercise. It's really like solving a fascinating puzzle, one that shows you exactly how our brain and body have this constant, incredible conversation. So let's unravel it together.
Okay, let's start with a real head scratcher, a genuine clinical mystery. Picture this. A patient comes in who can't move their left leg at all. It's paralyzed, but they can feel a pinprick on it just fine. Meanwhile, their right leg moves perfectly, but they can't feel that same pinprick. I mean, that sounds totally contradictory, right? How on earth could one single injury cause such a bizarre, split down the middle set of problems?
Well, the answer, and it's a really elegant one, is hidden deep inside the spinal cord. The best way to think about the spinal cord is as an information superhighway. But it's not just one big road. It's actually a bundle of very distinct lanes, and each lane has a specific job. Some carry signals up to the brain, and others carry commands from the brain back down to the body.
And on this superhighway, there's a fundamental rule of traffic you have to know. All the sensory stuff, touch, pain, temperature, it all comes in through a back door, which we call the dorsal root. And all the motor commands, the signals telling your muscles to actually do something, they go out through a front door, the ventral root. Just remember, sensory in the back, motor out the front. Simple as that.
Now, to solve our big puzzle, we don't need to memorize every single little pathway in the spinal cord. Thank goodness, right? We just need to focus on 3 key players, the 3 main lanes on this highway that handle the most critical info for movement and sensation.
And here they are, our main characters, all living in different neighborhoods of the spinal cord. We've got the spinothalamic tract, the dorsal column, and the corticospinal tract. Now notice how 2 of them are going up, those are ascending sensory pathways, and 1 is coming down, that's our descending motor pathway. So let's break down what each of these guys actually does.
First up is the spinothalamic tract. Its job is super specific. You can think of it as the ouch pathway. It's the one that screams up to your brain, hey, that's hot, or whoa, that's cold. It is the ascending pathway completely dedicated to carrying signals for pain and for temperature. Next is the dorsal column. This is our other big sensory pathway going up, but it handles the more, refined sensations. It's in charge of proprioception, which is your brain's amazing, almost magical ability to know where your arms and legs are without you even looking. It also carries the signals for fine touch and vibration, like feeling the texture of a shirt or the buzz from your phone.
And our third and final player is the corticospinal tract. Now this one is the big boss of movement. It's a descending pathway, meaning it's carrying commands from the brain's motor cortex down the highway, telling your muscles precisely what to do. This is your get up and go signal.
Okay, so we know our 3 main lanes and what kind of traffic they carry. But here it comes, the plot twist. This is the single most important idea for solving our mystery. These pathways don't all stay on the same side of the body.
And this brings us to 2 really important words you see here, contralateral and ipsilateral. All contralateral means is that the signal crosses over to travel on the opposite side of the spinal cord from where it started. And ipsilateral, that just means it stays on the same side. That's it. And believe me, understanding that little difference is everything.
And to make this super easy, there's a really simple rule to remember. The 2 up high, 1 down low rule. What does that mean? Well, 2 of our tracks cross over up high in the brainstem. That's our motor pathway coming down and our proprioception pathway going up. Only 1 tract crosses down low, right after it enters the spinal cord. And which one is that? You guessed it, our pain and temperature pathway, the spinothalamic tract. Okay, we officially have all the pieces. We know the key players, we know what they do, and most importantly, we know where they cross. We have every single clue we need to go back and finally solve this thing.
So let's revisit the problem. Let's imagine there's an injury that damages only the left half of the spinal cord at a specific spot. Now, with what we know, let's trace our 3 pathways and see exactly what that single lesion would do to our patient.
Let's do this the smart way, systematically. We're going to look at the effect of this left-sided damage on each of our 3 major tracks, one by one. Let's start with motor control.
All right, let's follow the motor pathway, the corticospinal tract that controls the left leg. Remember, it already crossed over way up high in the brainstem, so it's already traveling down the left side of the cord when, wham, it runs right into our lesion. The result? Paralysis on the same side as the injury, the left leg. And you know what? The exact same logic applies to the dorsal column. that proprioception signal from the left leg travels up the left side, so it also gets blocked by the lesion before it ever gets a chance to cross, so you lose motor and proprioception on the same side as the injury.
But now, here's the magic moment. What about the pain signal from the right leg? Well, that signal enters the cord on the right side, but remember our rule? It's the one down low. It immediately crosses over to the left side to start its journey up to the brain, and it runs smack into our lesion. And that is why the patient loses pain sensation on the opposite side of the injury. The pain pathway from the left leg is perfectly fine because it crossed over to the undamaged right side and just kept on going.
And there you have it. It all makes perfect sense. This specific weird pattern of symptoms actually has a name. It's called Brown-Séquard syndrome. And what seemed like a totally random, contradictory mess of problems is actually perfectly explained by one single localized injury to one half of the spinal cord. It's honestly a beautiful piece of neurological detective work. This table here is basically your cheat sheet. It pulls everything together beautifully. You can see the function, the location, and, the most important part, the different crossing points for each tract. And just look, the spinal thalamic tract is the odd one out, crossing right away in the spinal cord. That detail is the key that unlocks the whole puzzle. And this is why this all matters so much in the real world. This is not just a fun brain teaser. By carefully testing a patient's movement and their different types of sensation on both sides of the body, a doctor can use this exact logic to figure out not just that there's a spinal cord injury, but precisely where it is. It's an incredible diagnostic tool.
So now you get it. You can solve the puzzle of Brown-Séquard syndrome. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. What happens if a disease decides to attack only the dorsal column or only the corticospinal tracts? You see, by understanding how these lanes are organized, you've basically unlocked a whole new way of thinking about the entire nervous system.
You ever see a puzzle where the pieces just don't seem to fit? Well, in the world of neurology, that's pretty much an everyday thing. So today, we're going to put on our detective hats. We're going to solve a fascinating medical case just by cracking the code of the spinal cord. Let's dive in. All right, so every good mystery needs a baffling setup, right? And this one is a doozy. We've got one patient, one single injury, but a whole mess of symptoms that at first glance make absolutely no sense together. In fact, they seem to totally contradict each other. Okay, so get this. The patient's left leg, it's paralyzed. And not only that, they can't tell where it is in space without looking. And here's the really weird part, their right leg can move just fine, but it has completely lost the ability to feel pain. How on earth is that possible? How can one single injury cause such specific opposite problems in two different legs? That's the puzzle we need to solve. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's gotta be a mistake, but it's not. That apparent contradiction, that is our single biggest clue. It's like a giant neon sign pointing us right to the problem. We just need to learn how to read the body's internal map. And that map, you guessed it, is the spinal cord. You know, it's easy to think of it as just a big cable of nerves, but it is so much more than that. It's an incredibly organized superhighway with information zipping back and forth between the brain and the body 24/7. So let's stick with that superhighway idea. This image here kind of breaks it down for us. We're going to focus on just 3 main lanes of traffic, or pathways. And trust me, understanding how these 3 lanes work, that's the key to blowing this whole case wide open. So what kind of traffic are we talking about here? Well, first you've got your descending traffic, motor commands. These are the go signals coming down from the brain telling your muscles what to do. Then you've got ascending traffic heading up to the brain. This is sensory info, and we're going to focus on 2 big ones. Pain and temperature signals, and something called proprioception, which is that incredible kind of sixth sense that lets you know where your limbs are without even looking. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. The plot twist, if you will. These lanes on our superhighway, they don't just stay on one side. Nope. At some point, they cross over to the other side of the body. And the exact spot where they cross, that single detail is the secret that solves everything. And there's actually a super simple rule to remember it all. Check this out. The rule is 2 up high, 1 down low. That's it. If you remember nothing else from this, remember that phrase. It just means 2 of our pathways cross way up high in the brainstem, but one of them crosses way down low, pretty much as soon as it enters the spinal cord itself. Okay, quick terminology break, because this is super important. You're going to hear 2 words, ipsilateral and contralateral. Ipsilateral just means the signal is on the same side of the spinal cord as the arm or leg it's communicating with. Contralateral means it's already crossed over, so it's on the opposite side. Same side, opposite side. Got it? This distinction is literally everything. All right, let's look at our one down low guy first. This is the pain and temperature pathway. A pain signal, say from your right foot, comes into the spinal cord, and bam, it crosses over to the left side almost instantly. Then it travels up to the brain on that left side. So for most of its journey in the cord, it's contralateral. It's on the opposite side. Now for one of the two up high. This is for proprioception, that sense of position we talked about. This signal behaves totally differently. It enters the cord and zips all the way up on the same side. It doesn't cross. That makes it an ipsilateral pathway. It only decides to cross over way up at the top in the brain's. And our last one, the motor pathway, is the other up high traveler. The command to, say, kick a ball, starts in your brain, it crosses over high up in the brainstem, and then it travels down the spinal cord on the same side as the leg it's going to move. So once it's actually in the spinal cord, it's also ipsilateral. It stays on the same side. Okay, quick recap. We have our 3 pathways. We have our golden rule, 2 up high, 1 down low. We have all the clues we need. So let's go back to our patient and finally solve this thing. And here it is, the smoking gun. The doctors found one single area of damage, a lesion. Think of it like a roadblock on our superhighway, and it's on the left side of the patient's spinal cord. Now we have everything. Let's put it all together and see how this one roadblock causes all those bizarre symptoms. So first up, the left leg. Why is it paralyzed and why can't the patient feel where it is? Well, think about it. The motor signals going down and the proprioception signals coming up, they're both ipsilateral, right? They travel on the same side. So a roadblock on the left side of the cord is going to block traffic for the left leg. Simple. Makes perfect sense. Okay, but what about the right leg? Why can't it feel pain? This is the really cool part. Remember, the pain pathway is contralateral. The signal from the right leg crosses over immediately and travels up the left side of the cord. So our roadblock on the left side, it's sitting right in the path of the pain signals coming from the right leg. Boom! And just like that, our mystery is solved. One single spot of damage explains everything. And this whole pattern, which seemed so bizarre at first, actually has a name. It's a classic textbook case called Brown-Sequard syndrome. It's exactly what happens when you get damage to just one half of the spinal cord. Mystery solved, case closed. But wait, we can get even more precise. The type of paralysis gives us another clue. See, the leg muscles are spastic. They're tight and rigid, not all floppy and limp. To a neurologist, that screams upper motor neuron lesion. And that tells them the injury has to be in the main solid part of the spinal cord, somewhere above the second lumbar vertebra. We haven't just solved the case, we've pinpointed the exact location of the crime. So what's the real lesson here? It's that anatomy isn't just about memorizing a bunch of boring names from a textbook. It's about understanding a system. It's a blueprint. And once you understand that blueprint, you can become a pretty amazing detective. And really, it all just boils down to this. This table right here is your ultimate cheat sheet. You've got your 3 main tracks, what they do, and the most important part, where they cross. If you can get your head around this simple chart, you've basically mastered the fundamental logic of the spinal cord. Seriously, just 3 pathways. That's all we needed. Just understanding the simple rules for these 3 information lanes unlocks the ability to figure out a huge number of neurological problems. It is amazing how powerful that simple piece of knowledge is. And that's really the point of all of this. This is why it matters. It takes what looks like a completely random and chaotic mess of symptoms and turns it into a clear roadmap. When you understand the body's own wiring diagram, you can trace any problem right back to its source. You know, it all comes down to a really simple, powerful idea. If you know the anatomy, you'll know the neurology. It's that direct. In this world, the map is the territory. If you know the layout, you can figure out what's going wrong. So I'll leave you with this thought. We just used a basic wiring diagram to untangle a really complex problem in the human body. It makes you wonder, right? What other huge, complicated systems out there, things like social networks or the economy or even computer code, could we finally make sense of if we just took a step back and figured out their fundamental map?
All right, let's jump right into a fascinating real-life medical mystery. We're talking about a case where an injury on one side of the body leads to paralysis on that same side,
but causes numbness on the opposite side. So how on earth is that possible? Let's figure it out.
So here's the setup, and it's a real head scratcher. You have a patient with an injury on the left side of their spinal cord. Now, you'd probably expect they can't move their left leg, and you'd be right. But here's the weird part. They can't feel pain in their right leg. This isn't some kind of riddle. It's a genuine clinical situation that really shows you just how incredibly complex our body's wiring is. Okay, so to crack this case, you have to understand that our nervous system doesn't just have one information superhighway. It actually has different highways for different kinds of information. Think of it like this. There's one major route for sending commands down from the brain to move your body, and a totally separate route for pain signals coming up to the brain.
And you can see exactly what I mean right here. Just look at the two routes. The motor pathway on the left, for movement, it looks like it takes a pretty direct shot from the brain. But the pain pathway on the right, well, that looks a little different, doesn't it? And it's that difference that holds the key to solving our entire puzzle.
Now, to really get this, there are two key terms we need to know. First, contralateral. That just means opposite side, and we use it for signals like pain that cross over almost right away. The other is ipsilateral, which means same side. We use that for signals that stay on the same side of the spinal cord for a long time. It's all about where they travel.
And this image right here, it perfectly sums up the one single rule you have to remember. When we're diagnosing spinal cord injuries, we don't really care where a signal starts in the brain. What matters, the only thing that matters, is the path that signal takes as it travels through the spinal cord itself.
And here it is. This is the secret. This is the key that unlocks the whole thing. Motor pathways cross over way up high in the brainstem, but pain pathways, they cross over way down low, pretty much the second they get into the spinal cord. That one little difference changes everything. Let's trace them.
Okay, first up, let's follow the signal that's supposed to be moving our patient's left leg, and we'll pinpoint exactly where things go wrong.
So check this out. The command to move your left leg actually starts in the right side of your brain. That signal travels down, crosses over, way up high in a part of the brainstem called the medulla, and then it continues all the way down the left side of the spinal cord, the same side as the leg it's trying to control. So here's the crucial part. By the time that motor signal gets down to where the injury is, it's already on the left side, cruising down its lane. So that injury on the left side of the cord, it acts like a giant roadblock. The command simply can't get through to the left leg. And boom, that's our first answer. The patient can't move their left leg because the injury is on the exact same side as the paralyzed leg. We call this an ipsilateral motor loss. Makes sense, right?
But now for the twist. Let's trace the pain signals, because you're about to see why the wiring for sensation is so different and frankly, so cool.
Okay, let's start with a pain signal coming from the left leg, the same side as the injury. That nerve signal enters the spinal cord on the left, but then it does this little magic trick. It immediately zips over to the right side of the cord and travels up to the brain in the safe lane, completely avoiding that roadblock on the left. Now, watch what happens with the signal from the right leg. It enters the cord on the right side and does that exact same crossover maneuver. But this time, when it crosses to the left, bam! It runs smack into the damaged area. That signal hits the roadblock and it's not getting to the brain. And there you have it. That is the solution to our paradox. The patient loses pain sensation on their right side, the side opposite of the spinal cord damage. It's a contralateral sensory loss. So we've traced the signals, we've followed the clues, and we understand the wiring. Now we can officially put a name to this very specific, very strange set of symptoms. This condition is called Brown-Séquard syndrome. It's a rare thing, and it's basically what happens when you get damage to exactly one half, a hemisection, of the spinal cord. And that damage leads to this bizarre, divided set of symptoms that seem so impossible at first glance. This table just lays it all out nice and simple. On the side of the injury, the ipsilateral side, you lose motor function, but you can still feel pain. On the opposite or contralateral side, it's the exact reverse. You can move just fine, but you can't feel pain. It's a perfect mirror image split. And this is why all this wiring stuff matters so much. Just like our source material here says, if you know the signs and symptoms, you can figure out the type and location of the lesion. A good clinician can look at what a patient can and can't do and know with incredible precision not just that there's an injury, but exactly where it is. All right, time for a quick pop quiz.
A patient comes in with paralysis on the same side as their injury and loss of pain on the opposite side. What's the diagnosis? Well, based on everything we've just gone over, you know the answer has to be D, Brown-Sequard syndrome. You know, we've solved the mystery for movement and for pain, but that's really just scratching the surface. It leaves you with another question, doesn't it? What about all the other signals, like your sense of vibration or proprioception, that amazing sense of just knowing where your arms and legs are? Do those pathways cross high or low? Understanding their routes, well, that's the next layer of this incredible diagnostic puzzle. All right, today we get to play clinical detective. We're going to crack a case that honestly seems completely impossible at first glance. A neurological puzzle locked deep inside the human spinal cord. Okay, let's jump right in.
So get this. Here's our mystery. We have a patient, and they've got a single injury on the left side of their spinal cord. Now, as a result, they can't move their left leg. Okay, that makes sense, right? Left side injury, left side problem. But, and this is the crazy part, they lose the ability to feel pain and temperature in their right leg. One injury causing symptoms on totally opposite sides of the body. How on earth does that work?
So yeah, that's our big question. It feels like it breaks all the rules, doesn't it? But stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll see it's not magic. It's just some really, really cool wiring built into our nervous system. Now, every good detective needs a map of the crime scene. So to solve this, we've got to first understand the basic layout of the spinal cord's incredible communication network.
The first thing you need to know is that the spinal cord isn't just one big road. Nope, think of it more like a massive superhighway system. It's a huge bundle of specialized lanes, and each lane, or tract as they're officially called, is a one-way street carrying a very specific kind of information.
And on these highways, traffic only flows in two main directions. You've got signals coming down from the brain, those are the motor signals, the commands that say, hey, leg, time to move. And then you have signals going up to the brain. That's all your sensory info, like ouch, that's hot, or hey, someone's tapping my shoulder.
Okay, so let's meet the main players in our case. Now, you can see there are a few different highways here, but for our specific mystery, we only need to worry about two of them. First, we have the motor highway for voluntary movement. And second, we have the highway for pain and temperature. These are our two key players.
Okay, you ready? Because this is where the plot thickens. This is the big twist in our detective story. It turns out these nerve highways, well, they don't always stay on the same side of the road. They cross over.
Now, to really get this, we just need two quick terms. Ipsilateral simply means same side. You know, a left side injury causes a left side problem. Easy. Contralateral means opposite side. That's a left side injury causing a right side problem, which is the weird part of our case, right? So ipsilateral is same, contralateral is opposite. Got it?
Cool.
So the entire secret to this whole puzzle, the key that unlocks everything, comes down to one simple question. Where do these different highways cross the midline? And here's the kicker. They don't all cross at the same spot.
And check this out. This is the key difference. The motor pathway, the one for moving your muscles, it crosses way, way up high in the brainstem. But the pain and temperature pathway, totally different story. It crosses way down low, pretty much the second it enters the spinal cord. A high crossover versus a low crossover. That detail, that's everything.
I love this one-way ticket analogy. Imagine a pain signal from your leg. The moment it gets into the spinal cord, bam, it uses its ticket, crosses over to the other side, and then starts its long trip up to the brain. It's a one and done deal. It crosses right away and never crosses back.
Okay, so we have all our clues now. We've got the map, we know which way the signals are traveling, and we've uncovered the secret of the different crossover points. I think we have everything we need to solve this thing.
So let's go back to our original crime scene, that single lesion just sitting there on the left side of the spinal cord. Now that we know how the wiring works, we can trace the signals and see exactly what happens.
Let's start with the command to move the left leg. It starts in the brain, crosses way up high, then travels down the left side of the spinal cord, and wham! It runs smack into our lesion. Roadblock, can't get through. The result? The left leg is paralyzed. Same side, ipsilateral. Now what about the pain signal from the right leg? It enters the spinal cord on the right, but what does it do? It immediately uses its ticket to cross over to the left side to travel up, and wham! It runs into the very same lesion. Roadblock. That signal isn't reaching the brain. The result? No pain sensation from the right leg. Opposite side, contralateral. And boom, just like that, the mystery is solved. And this very specific, very fascinating pattern of symptoms, it actually has a name. It's called Brown-Sequard syndrome. And it's a classic clinical picture that perfectly shows how knowing the anatomy really unlocks the diagnosis.
But wait, we're not done yet. We can actually go one level deeper. It turns out the type of paralysis the patient has gives us another massive clue about exactly where the injury is.
So to understand this, let's use a boss versus worker analogy. Think of the boss as the nerve in your brain, the upper motor neuron. It sends signals down the line. The workers are the local nerves that connect directly to the muscles, the lower motor neurons. Now, normally, the boss doesn't just send work orders. It also sends signals telling the workers to, calm down and relax. So what happens if you cut the phone line to the boss, which is what our spinal cord injury does? Well, the workers down at the factory lose that supervision. Without those calm down orders, they just overreact. They get tense, tight, and uncontrolled. This is called spasticity paralysis. It's like the workers are throwing a party because the boss can't call. And here is the crucial point. Since our patient has that spastic, over-the-top paralysis, we know the injury must be to the phone line, the solid part of the spinal cord. If the injury was way lower down in that bundle of nerve roots, it would be like damaging the workers directly. They wouldn't be able to do anything, and you'd get a limp, floppy paralysis. So the spasticity pinpoints the injury to the solid cord itself. And there you have it. Case closed. By understanding the wiring diagram, we figured out what was happening: Brown-Sequard syndrome. And by looking at the type of paralysis, we figured out where it was happening. The symptoms that seemed so contradictory at the beginning now make perfect anatomical sense. This whole case really just leaves us with one simple but incredibly powerful truth. It's the bedrock of clinical neuroscience. If you want to understand how the nervous system works or why it's broken, you have to know its structure. To know neurology, you absolutely must first know anatomy.